We are moving on to lesson 3, and this one's all about solving percents mentally. And so here's just it's a list. I know it seems kind of long, but there are 18 fractions and percents there. Some of these you should know already and be easy to figure out. But these are the ones that you should know and you should kind of have an idea of. So as we go throughout this and know do these mentally, these are the ones that you're going to be referencing the most. So that first column over there, 25, 50, 75, and 100, those are all multiples of 25. And then we go down the middle column, we have 20, 40, 60, 80, those are all multiples of 20. And notice that those ones all, there's a 5 in the denominator. Now in the first column, it's a 4, a 2, a 4, and then 1 whole, but if you could all reference those back to having a denominator of 4, because 1/2 is really 2/4, 3/4, and then 4/4. Then we have 10% is 1/10. Then notice 20% would be 2/10, 30% is 3/10, 40% would be 4/10, 50% would be 5/10, 60% would be 6/10, 70% is 7/10, so on and so forth. I didn't include 20, 40, 50, 60, and 80 because they're included elsewhere in simplest form on that chart. And then we have the eighths. So 12.5% is 1/8. Now 2/8 is 1/4, so that would be 25%, which is already included. Then we have 37.5% is 3/8, 4/8 is a half, 62.5% is 5/8, 6/8 is already included, that's 3/4, and then 87.5% is 7/8, and obviously 8/8 would be 1. Then down at the bottom we have our thirds. 33.33% is 1/3, 66 2/3 is 2/3, and then obviously 3/3 would be 100%. So those are the ones that you're going to want to know. So let's go ahead and take a look now. And again, I'm going to go ahead and erase these. You may not have all those copied down yet, but pause the video if you need to. And so now we're going to take a look at how to use these fractions and percentages when we're solving mentally. So example number 1. They want us to find 75% of 24. So again, this is going to be similar to that last section we did, which we watched the online video about doing the percent proportion. So of indicates that that's our whole. So 24 is the whole. We have our percent, and so we're looking for the part. We're not going to go through the whole thing of finding the percent proportion because 75% is one of our easy fractions. So really what this means is we can translate this to be 3/4 of 24. Here's the way I've always taught this in the past, and I don't know if this will work for some of you or not, but when you're looking at 3/4 of 24, what you want to do is start by taking this number and divide it by the denominator. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. That gets it into 4 equal parts of 6 each. So we have 24 divided by 4 is 6, times 3 gives us 18. So it's 3/4 of 24 is 18. And that's how we do that mentally. We're using this fraction to our benefit because it's easy to work with. And the numbers here obviously are going to be ones that are going to be a little more easy to convert using these fractions. So let's go and take a look at another one here. So part B, we're going to find 80% of 60. So again, remember that 80% as a fraction is 4/5. So we're looking for 4/5 of 60. So when we do this, we're going to take 60 divided by 5, which is 12, times 4 is 48. So 80% or 4/5 of 60 is 48. And it's as easy as that to do these mentally. So that's the process we're going to use. We're going to take that whole number, divide it by the denominator so we get that many equal parts, and then multiply it by how many of those parts we want. So let me give you two of them to do on your own, and let's see how you guys do with these. And then as usual, I'll give you the answers before we move on so that you can check your work and determine if you're correct or not. So part C here, we're going to do 40% of 50. And part D will be 30% of 70. So go ahead and see if you can convert those into the parts by using the fractions that we just discussed. So 40% is 2/5 of 50. So we take 50 divided by 5 and we get 10 times 2. It gives us 20. Over here we have 30% of 70, which is going to be 3/10 of 70. So 70 divided by 10 is 7 times 3 gives us 21. So that's the main piece here. These are the things that we're going to be focusing on. But now we're just going to do some word problems to kind of put this into application. Because really being able to do percentages mentally is going to help you out a lot, especially when you're in the grocery store or any department store or whatever that is. If you're looking at it and it says, you know, off these pair of jeans or whatever, if it's 40% off, you want to be able to figure out, well, what am I going to pay? So when you go up to the clerk, if they're overcharging you, you can figure out what your sale price should have been compared to maybe what they're charging you to make sure that they're correct. So let's go ahead and take a look at this next example. And so we're going to take an example just like that one. So here in example number 2, it says, Hannah is shopping for school clothes. We've all been there. So Hannah's shopping for school clothes, and she has a coupon that will give her 20% off her entire purchase. So she has a coupon for 20% off her entire purchase. If the items she buys cost $110 originally, so if her items originally cost $110, oops, how much will she pay for the sale price? So looking at this, we're determining, so she has 20% off. Her items originally cost $110. How much will she pay for the sale price? So we kind of need to do a couple of different things here, and there's a couple of different ways you could do this. One way would be to say, okay, she's going to take 20% off of the $110. So let's figure out what 20% of that is, and then we'll subtract that from the total. So let's figure out 20% of 110. Remember that 20% is 1/5. So we're looking at 1/5 of 110. So when I do that, we're going to take 110 and divide it by 5. We end up getting 22. So in 1/5 of that, we just want one of those. So that's 22. So she's going to save $22, which means how much does she pay? Well, she's going to pay 110 minus 22, which will end up giving her $88. So she's going to pay $88 for her clothes. The other way to do this is to say, well, instead of taking the money off, let's just figure out what percentage she's actually paying. She's actually paying 80% of the total bill, original bill. So I could also say, well, let's just figure out 80% of 110. Well, again, 80% is 4/5 of 110. We know 110 divided by 5 from before is 22, but then I want that 4 times. So that's going to give me 88. So either way, both ways, we get that she's paying $88 for her new clothes. So 2 different ways of doing it, we get the same answer. You either find out what is she not paying and how much can we take away, or how much of the original cost is she actually paying, and let's just figure that out directly. So next time you're at the store, if you see something's on sale for 30% off, you could say, well, I can figure out 30% and then subtract it, or we could just say, I'm going to pay 70% of the original price. And that's going to be kind of a preference issue. They're both correct. I will accept both methods. It's just up to you as to which one you would prefer to do. Now, sometimes we're going to get ones that aren't, obviously we can't have all of our numbers in life fall within these 16, 18 fractions with some really nice numbers. So what happens if we get numbers that aren't quite what we want them to be? For instance, 26% of 64. 26% is not quite one of our numbers. It's close to one of our numbers, but not quite there. So we're going to go ahead and say, what's it really close to that we do know? Well, we do know it's approximately 25%. So if we look at 25% of 64, that's going to get us really close to 26%, and it's going to give us a really good estimate. So that's going to be 1/4 of 64. Well, 64 divided by 4 is 16 times 1. So we're going to say it's about 16. And again, this is only going to work if it's really, if it's really close to it. So let's take a look at another one of those. What about if I had something like 39% of 81? Well, 39% of 81 is really close to 40%. Now, 81 might not necessarily be something that we want to look at, but we could round that to about 80, right? So we can say 39 is close to 40 and 81 is close to 80. So let's take 2/5 of 80 instead. Well, 80 divided by 5 is going to get us 16 times 2 is going to get us 32. So 39% of 81 is about 40% of 80, which is approximately 32. So again, not exact, but really close to what we're actually looking for. So sometimes you might just have to estimate and round that up or down a little bit to make it convenient to do mentally. And that might happen in the store. Something might be 15% off. So it's like, well, let me figure out what 10% is, and I know it's going to be a little more than that, and you can kind of do some estimation there. So now this is another one that's going to come up a lot in daily life. And now I know some of your parents and some of you even might have iPods or smartphones that will do this for you. But when you go to a restaurant, now not a fast food restaurant, but when you go to a restaurant, typically you leave a tip, right? and usually that tip falls anywhere between 15 and 20%. So that's something that you want to be able to figure out, because you might not have your phone with you. Your phone might be dead. You may be kind of trying to be quick with it. So we do want to figure out what is 15% of a bill so that we can figure out what that tip is. So we're going to look at a problem with Mr. Williams. So Mr. Williams had a class pizza party. The total for the pizza was $57.96. You want to give the delivery person a 15% tip. How much should he pay in total? So again, we don't have an exact fraction for 15%, so we're going to have to break this up a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to do a little bit of rounding here. So the 57.96, I'm going to go ahead and round this to 60. Because even 58 isn't necessarily going to be evenly divisible, so we're just going to round it up a little bit to 60 so it's easier to work with. Then the 15%, we're going to break down into 10% and 5%. Now you may say 5% isn't one of our fractions. No, but it's half of 10%. So once we figure out the 10%, we can take half of that, add the two together, and that'll get us our 15%. So what is 10% of 60? A lot of you may know 10% is 1/10. 60 divided by 10 gives us 6. Well, what's 5% of 60 then? Well, if 10% is 6, that means half of that, 5%, is 3. So what does the total 15% give us? 9. So our tip is going to be approximately $9. Well, if I take that 9 and I add it to the 57.96, we end up owing a total of $66.96, approximately, for that meal, or for that party. And so this concludes this lesson. So again, you really want to go back to those fractions we wrote down in the beginning and make sure you have all those listed so you have those handy. So as you're memorizing those percentage and fraction equivalents, these can become more regular and that you'll be better off with those.